Hello and welcome to the Devoted Outdoorsman Podcast.
Hello, Podcast Nation. What is up? And I hope you guys have been staying cool, because I don't know about you, but in Oklahoma this week, it has been, it's gone from being decently temperature-wise to being ridiculously hot. So I hope you guys are staying cool, staying out of the heat. This week, we have a pretty cool guest. We're going to talk to Zach Herold. He is what I would say, he is very knowledgeable when it comes to Western game. He has his own podcast, and he does some Western game type hunting stuff on there. He talks to guides and outfitters and all kinds of stuff. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about elk hunting, and maybe we'll get into some other species. So Zach, how did you kind of get introduced into the outdoors?
Man, I tell you what, the outdoors actually came into my life at a very young age. The very first trip that I ever went on, I was 2 years old, and I rode in the panniers on the horse up to the top of the mountain with my dad to go pack out his elk. So ever since then, it has kind of became much more of an obsession and much more of a lifestyle as opposed to just a hobby. But that's kind of was where my roots have started anyways.
So are you primarily like an archery or a rifle type hunter?
I'm not allergic to either, right? So, especially when it comes to just putting meat in the freezer, I will use whatever is legal and ethical to get the job done. I prefer archery. That's kind of where most of my attention and everything like that, and most of my draw applications and tags and all that kind of stuff are directed towards archery type tags. But I'm definitely not allergic to rifle tags or shooting anything with a rifle at all whatsoever. I think that if you were out there hunting for the right reasons, whatever those reasons are to you, I think that's probably the best thing to do.
And I think a lot of hunters in general, I think they share that kind of same opinion on things. I think today in the outdoor industry, there's a lot of divide when we need to be uniting, because, hunters are being attacked every day by the non-hunting, people. They don't it's not necessarily because they think, hunting's evil. It's just, a lot of times I think they just don't understand. And us as hunters, I think we need to unite. That way we have a solid front.
I think that's a great point that you just made, because the amount of non-hunters that don't realize that after you shoot an animal, you spend the next day or two packing the entire thing out so that your family can eat is insane. They see one of the grip and grin pictures, and they look at that, and they're like, oh, so the only reason you shot that thing is so you can take a picture and you can hang those on the wall? No, I shot it so that I can feed my family for the rest of the year until next season. But the majority of non-hunters don't realize that. And us as hunters doing it legally and ethically and portraying it the correct way, we can really help bring the correct light on hunting and everything like that to those non-hunters.
Exactly. I think a lot of it has to do with people being brought up in different types of environments. Like you were saying, you're kind of brought up in a hunting type environment. So was I. When I was 3 years old, I was out in the deer stand with my father. So, we were kind of brought up in that environment. So when I talk to someone that wasn't necessarily brought up in that type of environment, I try to explain things, but it gets to a point when you're talking about, harvesting an animal or whatever it may be, where you completely lose someone that's never been in that position.
Yep, 100%.
So do you have a favorite state and species that you like to hunt?
My favorite state is Wyoming. I was born and raised in Wyoming, and I can get a lot of tags just in Wyoming alone. So definitely my favorite state is Wyoming. Now, if I were to choose like a favorite non-resident state, it's kind of a toss-up for myself. There's so much opportunity out there for people wanting to venture out of their home states to hunt, whether it be elk or mule deer or antelope or black bear, or really, whatever you're looking for. There's so much opportunity out there that it's kind of mind-boggling. So yeah, definitely Wyoming, the home state. And as far as animals go, I'm I'm more of an antler type person. Antlers get me excited, so being elk, mule deer, whitetails, somewhat moose, somewhat caribou, but not a ton. Mainly the big three for me are elk, mule deer, and whitetails. I don't know what it is. Like I've shot big antelope before, and I just am like, oh, cool, another antelope, but something about elk, deer, mule deer, and whitetail, they just get me going for sure.
So Wyoming has a pretty abundant amount of antelope, correct?
Yeah. It's not uncommon for me to see like 300 antelope in a day.
Yeah, I was talking to someone a few months ago about antelope hunting, and they were telling me it's like $40 or something like that for a tag in Wyoming, but that could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a resident, yeah, it's 38 or 48 bucks. It's cheap.
And, one of like the go-to states that I hear of a lot, not necessarily for antelope, but for, just out west type hunting is Colorado. Everybody, talk about elk, and everyone's like, man, we're going to Colorado. And have you ever hunted in Colorado?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the coolest things about Colorado as well as Idaho, especially from what it sounds like most of your listeners are the eastern guys, which is awesome. I hunt out east almost every year as well. So, but if you guys are wanting to venture west, places like Colorado and Idaho offer elk tags over the counter. So what's so cool about that is the fact that you can plan on the hunt 100%. It's not like Wyoming where you apply for the draw and you're you're tentatively planning on it until you figure out whether you drew or not. Colorado is you just go buy it. So you can like go to Cabela's or a local sporting goods store or whatever and just buy the tag. So you can literally plan everything from A to Z, drive there, buy your tag, and go hunting. So that's what's so cool about Colorado and Idaho, is the elk hunts. You can just plan on it and go do it. There's no guessing, there's no waiting. You just go do it, and that's awesome.
One of the things I have talked about in the past, and like you said, a lot of the listeners of the podcast are from eastern states or midwestern states. So some of the people I've talked to in the past, they get overwhelmed with the rules and regulations. Colorado's kind of confusing, but I think that has to do a lot with we're kind of new to it. We don't have all these different zones like Colorado does. And the regulations can be kind of confusing. So do you know of any programs or like software or anything like that that can kind of help you navigate through that process?
What I do is whenever whether there's units or not, the like actual rules and regulations aren't going to really vary that much from each state to each state, right? So while it seems like it does and while it seems super overwhelming, there's still a season start date and there's a season end date, right? There's still this area is open and that area is closed. There's still this area is public and that area is private, So really it's not as much different as one would think by looking at it, because you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, there's 250 different units. My state only has 3. I can get where that would be super overwhelming for people, but just don't let the number of units overwhelm you. Just realize it's really not that much different. And then once you start going through the process of learning a little bit about it, if you have any questions, every single state out there has super, super helpful game and fish or fish and game, which however you prefer to say it. Just call them up and say, hey, I am a non-resident. I'm looking at hunting this, and this is something that's just really confusing to me. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, oh yeah, no problem. I get this question all the time. And then it's like, here, this is the answer, and away you go,
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I kind of ran into last year, because I was trying to plan an elk hunt out in Colorado last year. And, I just got overwhelmed with it, and I was just like, oh, I'm done. I'm not doing it. I'll do something in Oklahoma, something that's easy. And then later on, I actually ended up calling Colorado Fish and Game, and they were just like, oh, yeah, like you said, we get this question every day. Like, this is the answer. And I was like, oh, that was easy. Like, I wish I knew that before.
Yeah, they're most of the time, they're super cool people. You just call up, and then usually 5-10 minutes later, you're already done. And they were super helpful. And and then you don't feel overwhelmed, because that surprisingly, and it's not even really surprisingly, because it's happened to me, it's happened to all kinds of people. You go on and you start looking into a hunt that you want to do and this, that, and whatever, and you start doing research, and then it comes time to apply, and you get so overwhelmed and confused that you don't want to apply anymore, and that happens a ton, but it can all be mitigated by simply calling the game and fish for the state, and whatever's confusing you, they'll remove the confusion and help you move forward with the process.
So let's kind of go through the process here. So like, let's say you pick the species you want to hunt. Let's say for, Colorado. Let's say you want to go to Colorado, you want to hunt elk. So you pick your unit, you pick your, their wildlife management areas up there, I believe, and, or refuges. I'm not really sure exactly which way they go up there. I'm sure there's both actually, but I'm not real familiar with it. So let's say you pick Colorado, you pick elk, and, the next step would be, you plan your week. And from my understanding, they have several different hunting seasons. Like, they'll have like a first rifle season or like a first bow season and a second bow season. Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, unlike Wyoming, if you come and hunt, and you draw a tag, you can hunt with a bow, and if you don't get anything, you come back and you can hunt with a rifle. Colorado's not like that. You have to choose your weapon. Now, you can always weapon down, though. So if you draw a rifle tag and you want to hunt with your bow during rifle season, you can do that. You just wear orange. That's considered weaponing down. But what you need to do is with Colorado, you need to figure out what you want to hunt with. So whether it be muzzleloader, whether it be rifle, whether it be bow. Obviously, I don't care, and neither do they. You just need to pick which one excites you most. So once you figure out which one excites you most, then it comes time to look at the units that are available for that weapon. So let's say archery, for instance. So you can go and you can just buy a general license over the counter, like I was talking about earlier, and away you go hunt. There's a bunch of units in Colorado that are general units, and you can hunt any of them with a general license. You don't have to pick unit specific when you have a general license. Or you can look up there and you can say, I want to hunt with a rifle. Okay, cool. Here's some of the areas that have a really high success rate. I'm going to look into those. And once you start looking into those, some of them will be apply. They won't be a general where you can just go buy it. So you would apply for the draw. And if you draw, cool. If you don't, you get a point, and then you apply for it again next year. But I would really recommend starting with, whether it be Colorado or Idaho, figuring out whether you want to hunt with a bow or a rifle or muzzleloader. And once you figure that out, then it's time to start looking at which units provide bow and muzzleloader, and they're broke down into bow hunting, rifle hunting, muzzleloader. They're broke down into those groups in the regulations in Colorado. So then once you look at it that way, then you can look and see if any of them are general. Some of them probably are. I only have experience with the archery. I go and hunt Colorado with my bow, but there very well could be some general units that are rifle. You just go buy it and you go hunt with your rifle. So yeah, definitely pick the state, pick the weapon, pick the species, and then you start doing the research on the units.
So while we're kind of talking about weapons, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I don't think there are any states that allow you to elk hunt with a crossbow. Is that correct, or do you have an idea on that?
No, yeah, absolutely. There's quite a few states. Wyoming is one of them. Some states, while they may allow it, some of them you have to have like a doctor's note, basically saying he had shoulder surgery or she had shoulder surgery and cannot physically draw a bow back. So we're clearing them to utilize a crossbow instead. Some states require, basically, for lack of better terms, a physical disability in order for you to actually use the crossbow. Some states like Wyoming, you don't have to have anything. Just pick up the crossbow and you go hunting, and it's still considered in bow season.
Yeah, because I know crossbows have kind of caused a controversy in certain aspects amongst especially the archery side of the industry. So that's something I always like to touch on, just to kind of see what the rules are and stuff. I wasn't sure there was a state out there that allowed that. So
man, real quick, here's the deal with crossbows, because this shit pisses me off. People are like, well, he has a crossbow. I don't care if he's got a crossbow. I don't care if he's got a rifle. If he's out there doing everything, or she, doing everything legal and ethical, awesome. I can shoot a bow with my fixed blade broadheads and touch arrows at 80 yards. And I can have a 6-inch group at 100 yards. I know people that can almost touch arrows at 120 yards with a bow. You can do that with a crossbow. Yep, you sure can. But if people are shooting that good with a bow, as I can with a crossbow, then the only disadvantage is the crossbow is always cocked. And who cares? It's still hunting. You're still out there enjoying the outdoors. You're still doing everything legal and ethical. As long as you are doing everything legal and ethical and you're following that state's rules and regulations, then I do not care. And all that's doing is dividing people. We're all a family, hunters. We're all out there to enjoy the outdoors. We're all out there to try and do better than we did yesterday. That's all we're out there for, is to enjoy each other, the outdoors, and have fun. And by nitpicking at, oh, well, he shot that with a rifle, or he shot that with a crossbow, or she didn't really shoot that, her boyfriend did. That's all stupid. It's just dumb. We're all out there to have fun. That's it.
Well, I'm glad to know that I'm not the only person that kind of gets, started up about that subject right there. That's why I kind of always touch on it, because it's interesting to see everyone's, kind of outlook on it. I've talked to people that are absolutely against it. It's cheating, it's not fair, and so forth and so on. But, people can say the same thing, a traditional hunter compared to someone that shoots a compound or whatever it may be. And I think that's just like you said, it's putting a divide between us hunters, and that's not what we need at this time. We need to unite. We need to unite and be, a solid front. That way we can, back ourselves up.
Yep.
So I know most states, I do believe, okay, I can't say I know, I do believe that most states you can only use fixed blade broadheads. Do you know of any states where you can use expandables? And most likely, I understand why they don't want you to use expandables. It's for, penetration stuff. On a large animal, if you're shooting an elk, it's not like shooting a whitetail. It's, double the size, if not triple the size, body cavity wise. So you have a lot more area to go through to penetrate to, successfully harvest that animal. So I understand why they don't want to use expandables, but I've had this question come up once before. So I didn't know if there were states that allowed that, or if there,
Yeah, actually, there's very few states that don't allow it. Idaho is behind the times. And it's funny when you talk to people that live in Idaho, they're like, what in the hell is wrong with these people? It's funny, but Idaho still only allows fixed blade broadheads, and there's one other that maybe it's Washington or Oregon. I don't quote me on that one. I know Idaho, they're really trying to get it changed, but no, man, Montana, Wyoming, Nebraska, all kinds of places allow expandable broadheads.
Well, you learn something new every day. See, I was under the impression that there was a lot of states that didn't allow it, so I was wrong. So that's good to know. So moving forward from there, we kind of, we picked our weapon, we picked our state, we picked the species. So now it comes down to, kind of preparing for that hunt. What are some of the processes that you go through when you're preparing for let's say a Colorado elk hunt or an Idaho elk hunt?
So if I've never hunted the area, then I will start with dissecting the area, breaking it down, looking for likely spots to find elk and everything like that. And then I transition into, I shoot my bow year round. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that I shoot it every single day. That's not what I'm saying, but I will shoot it 1 to 5 times a week. 1 to 5 days a week, I guess is the best way to put it. And I shoot my broadheads I shoot my broadheads more often than I shoot field points. I just like that gives me confidence. But obviously working on the physical aspect of getting in shape, carrying around weight, everything like that, shooting your bow with weight in your backpack, hiking up hills, hiking down hills. They use two very different muscles. Shooting while your heart rate is elevated. A place that gives really, really great workouts, everything like that, is Elevation Fitness Training. Courtney Levesque and Stephen Dawn. Those two are they're incredible and know so much, super helpful. So, if you're looking for any type of workouts, kind of like what I'm doing to prepare for my hunts, check them out. They'd be more than happy to help. So I do that, start physical shape and all that kind of stuff. And then I dehydrate and all that kind of stuff, my own meals. So I have all my meal prep ready. Say I'm going on an 8-day trip, day 1 through 8. I have literally what I'm going to eat for breakfast, snacks, lunch, snacks, dinner, all in a Ziploc bag. That's day 1. Then day 2, I do the same thing, break it down. Same with day 3, same with day 4, obviously, all the way up to day 8. I don't specifically count calories. Not that I don't think it's important. It's more that I'm too lazy to count the calories. So I don't count the calories. I probably take more food than I need, but I also don't like being hungry. I don't drink hardly any water, and that's not like a, pounding my chest type thing. That's more of I'm stupid and don't feel thirsty, so I don't drink water, which is not good. You should definitely drink water, drink a lot more than I do. I can make 3 liters of water last for 3 days, which is not drinking enough water. So I have all that stuff ready. And then I have I have a gear list. I've found that if I don't have a gear list, I wander around my house meaningless for way too long. So I have a gear list, that I have compiled from all of my other outdoor excursions that I will start going through, checking things off, putting everything in a pile. And then once I have everything there in a pile, what I will do is, I will then start, putting like the sleeping bag in the stuff sack or my rain gear in the stuff sack, start compressing everything and putting it where it needs to go and then putting it all in my pack. And then I have my entire pack loaded. I put that in whatever vehicle I'm taking, and then I head to the trailhead. Then all I have to do is literally turn off the car, lock the car, load my backpack up, and away I go.
So I've heard some pretty extreme type ideas when it comes to like your gear lists and like especially weight of your pack. So do you know how much your pack weighs when you go in?
My pack is probably, obviously it depends if I'm going for 3 days or if I'm going for 8. It's a very different type. It also depends on if I'm hunting Colorado or Nevada in August or if I'm hunting Wyoming late September. I'm going to bring very different items and things like that for each hunt. But so let's say a 5-day hunt in Colorado in August, my pack going in is probably 40 to 45 pounds. Now that's not counting my camera gear that is on my tripod that's in my hand. That's probably another 10 or 15 pounds, with the tripod, with everything. So that's not counting that. Now, if I'm going in Wyoming in late September where there's usually, with my luck, there's usually snow and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to bring, my entire rain gear, my gaiters, sometimes puffy top, puffy bottom, all that kind of extra stuff. So I'm probably looking at 55-ish pounds going in. Now, then once again, another caveat is if my son comes with me, I usually carry his sleeping bag, all of his clothes, all his extra food and everything like that. So then I'm probably looking at 70 to 80 pounds going in.
See, that's what I kind of gathered from some of the information that I'd been looking at is, 70 to 80 pounds is a pretty average size for someone that's doing, kind of like a 5-day or, a little bit longer hunt. And, I've kind of, it's not that I'm going on an elk hunt this year, but, hopefully in the future I will do something like that. And I've kind of been, training myself for the past, 6 months or so. I got a bag, or I have a pack that I weighed it the other day, and it's exactly 80 pounds. And people look at me like I'm crazy, man. And I'm like, hey, I don't want to be stuck out there, trying to go up the side of a mountain or wherever it may be and gassed out because I wasn't used to carrying something this heavy around.
Yeah, so usually and some great people to check out, like their podcast is Brian Barney with Eastman's Elevated, obviously my podcast, Archery Maniacs, or Hunt Harvest Health with Ryan Lampers. Those guys, including myself, we do quite a bit of this. They do more than they're quite a bit older than I am, so they've done it a lot more than I have, and they have it down to a science. Like Brian can get an 8-day pack down to like 40 pounds, right? So where you're training with 80 pounds, I don't think it's crazy at all. Especially if you're packing something out. When you're packing in, if you have an 80-pound pack, you did something wrong. I'm just being 100% honest with you. If you're packing in there with an 80-pound pack, now barring people like Remy Warren or Aaron Snyder or people like that are bringing 20s to 30 pounds in camera gear, that doesn't count, right? Because the average person doesn't have that. So barring people like that, and sometimes myself where I pack all my son's gear, you should be able to get a 5 to 8 day pack down to 45 to 55 pounds. You really should, right? But when it comes time to bring that elk back out, you're going to be looking at 80, 100, 150, 200 pound packs. And that's when all your training that you're doing right now with your 80 pound pack, that's when that's all going to pay off.
Yeah, and that's the way I kind of looked at it was, my pack might not necessarily weigh 80 pounds when I go to pack in, but I want to have that middle ground because, like you said, if I do end up harvesting an animal and I'm trying to pack it out, I know I'm probably going to be that guy that puts, a little bit too much on there. I'm going to put as much as I can and then a little more. And that's not necessarily always the safest way to handle things, but that's just the way I do things sometimes.
Yeah, no, I'm that guy that when it's time to bring in the groceries, I literally, slide them all the way up onto my shoulders and can barely fit through the doorway because I'm not going to take more than one trip. I'm just not going to do it. So, yeah, man, I completely get you. Like last year in Colorado, I boned out an entire, thank God it was a spike elk, it was a legal bull, barely, but I boned out an entire legal bull and put it in my backpack with 6 days worth of camp, and that was like 200 plus pounds, right? But I wasn't going back into that hole, number one, and number two, if I wouldn't have packed it all out at once like that, the meat would have spoiled. It was like 95 degrees. So sometimes you just gotta shut up and do it. You just nut up or shut up and do what you got to do.
Yeah, one foot in front of the other. That's the way I like to look at it.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah, so the whole 80-pound pack thing actually started, I was kind of, getting an idea to, go on an elk hunt, like I said, I was kind of trying to get, motivated, trying to get in a little bit better shape for that type of hunt. And I think this would have been like 2016 when this kind of all started. I harvested at a whitetail that was about 2.5 miles from the car. And, like I said, Oklahoma, pretty flat land. There's not a lot going on, but it killed me dragging that deer out of there. It's a pretty thick area, and it killed me. So that's when it all started. I was like, man, I got to get in better shape.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And what kills me is when people don't realize that. People are like, well, you don't have to be in great shape to go elk hunting. And I'm like, well, you might not have to go run super marathons like Cameron Hanes, but Cameron Hanes is not running super marathons because of elk hunting. He's running those because he enjoys it. That's what he likes to do, which is awesome for him. But it couples over, and it sure as hell helps him when it comes time to be in the elk country. It really does. But I can guarantee you right now, if you cannot walk up a flight of stairs without getting out of breath, like from ground level all the way up 5 flights of stairs without getting out of breath, elk country is going to kick your ass.
Yeah, not everybody can be Cam Hanes and run a marathon a day. So,
right?
That's kind of the extreme of it.
Yeah, that dude's, I mean, he's incredible. He really, really is. And just a super nice, humble guy that he works for everything that he has. But man, I'm telling you right now, you don't have to go run marathons. No, you don't. But you need to be doing more than sitting on the couch every night and drinking beer before you come hunting. Trust me.
So another thing that I hear causes a lot of problem for people that come from the east or, kind of little flatlander type people is the elevation, like elevation sickness. Are there any tips that you can give people to kind of get ready for that type of elevation?
So it's there's not all that much that you can do as far as elevation sickness goes. I mean, obviously there's pills and things like that you can take. But as far as preseason goes, other than being able to go scouting, which when it takes 15 to 20 hours to drive to where you're going to go elk hunting, scouting is pretty tough. I get that. Other than something like that, elevation sickness is just one of those evils, right? Now, if you're going up there and you're in pretty good shape, it's less likely, obviously, but elevation sickness can hit people that are in great shape as well, I fortunately have never had it. I think my house right now is at 7,500 feet, so it's I'm pretty high as it is, but no, I think that's kind of a glory. One of the glory things about coming and hunting elk in Idaho or Colorado with the general units is you can do a little bit of research, and if you're truly worried about elevation sickness, pick a unit that's not that high in elevation, and there you go. Problem solved.
Yeah, I know. I think it's a Wilderness Athlete. I think that's one of them. They sell a altitude type. I'm not really sure what it exactly is in the supplement, but I think they sell a supplement for that. Going forward from there, man. Let's say once you're out there, you get on the elk, you end up harvesting an elk. A lot of the people that listen to the podcast, or even myself, I've never handled. Well, I've cows and stuff, but I've never handled a wild animal like an elk out in the wild. Never had to debone one completely. What is kind of your process to that? Do you skin them? I think there's a gutless method that people do, and what's your kind of method through that?
Yeah, so I do the gutless method for a couple reasons. Usually, more often than not, I do my own meat processing. So when I get home, I'm going to have to bone out the animal, take the bone off the legs or wherever else anyways. So rather than packing the unnecessary weight of the leg bones and whatever else, I bone it out right there, So I will, and I'm probably not the best at it. I just kind of do it my own way, and it's worked for me, but I will go down the backbone kind of like a zipper, and then I will start to peel the hide back, along each side, and then I will pull all the meat off of the shoulder, all the meat off of the hind, then the back straps, and then you can keep going, and you can pull the neck meat off both sides, and then you're behind the very last rib. You can feel where the very last rib is connected still, obviously, to the backbone. Just past that, you make a small incision and you just reach in there and you pull out the tenderloins, and then obviously roll the animal over. You do the exact same thing on the other side. Now, if I am my elk in Colorado, for instance, what I did to help that meat cool is obviously in elks, the hind quarter, there are muscle groups. So what I did was I basically dissected each muscle group and broke them apart, And overnight, I laid those out so that they could all cool separately. And because an elk or a moose or something like that, their hinds are so big that even if the outside cools, the inside won't cool and it'll spoil. So if you dissect it by the muscle groups, and this is if you're going to stay overnight or it's going to take you a long time to pack it out. If you can do it all in one day, it's fine. But if it's going to take you a little bit longer to get it out, or you got to stay overnight or whatever, you dissect each one of those muscle groups, and then you hang them in a game bag or hang them in a tree or somewhere where something isn't going to eat them, and then the air gets all around them, cools them out, and basically at that point I'll also go through and, like, if there's great big chunks of gristle or fat that I'm going to cut off and throw away when I get home anyways. Sometimes if I'm in, if I know it's a long ways or whatever, I'll take some of that off as well. And then obviously start putting it all in the pack and start packing it out. But the coolest part about the gutless method is you don't mess with the guts, obviously. And half the work is done when you get home. You get back to the vehicle, you put it on ice, you go home, and then you can go straight to cutting it into steak, obviously clean it, and then you cut it into steaks or make hamburger or whatever else because it's already off the bone. So some states, though, they don't allow you to bone out animals, so make sure that you ask that. So we at Archery Maniacs are putting together a booklet of questions to ask the game biologist and the game warden and all that kind of stuff, so that when you go to a place and you go hunt, nothing bites you in the ass. So, like, one of the questions is, am I allowed to bone out the animal? Yes or no? One of the questions is, if I find a great big dead head, can I take that with me? Some states don't allow you to, so the last thing you want is to go in there and have a successful hunt and then something little like that mess you up and you get a big fine for it, and then the hunt wasn't as much fun anymore. Even all the way down to if you're going to take animals in there, some states want you to have certified hay. I mean, there's a lot of questions that people would never even think about, so that's why we put together the booklet. We're working on getting it out. It's basically going to help you from step A all the way to Z to help you pick a unit, you pick a species, pick a unit, pick a state, do all the research for that unit, and then all the questions to ask the game wardens and game biologists and everything so that you can narrow down where you should hunt as well as do everything legally and ethically.
Awesome, man. So that will be a really good tool for, some of my listeners. So definitely, do you know when you're going to have that available?
I'm hoping, because everybody's in research session right now, I'm hoping by the end of July, and it's going to be super cheap. It's going to be like $5 to $10 or something like that. It's going to be super cheap.
Perfect. So you guys that are listening and you guys are planning like an elk or, just any type of Western hunt, you guys should definitely check out that little booklet that he's making, because that right there could be, the key to you ended up getting a find that you didn't expect or that you didn't even know about. I've talked to several people that went to Colorado on a mule deer type hunt and ended up actually having their deer confiscated several months later because of something that they broke that they didn't even know was going on. So like you said, ask the game warden, call Fish and Game. They're happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, absolutely, and also it's going to have basically an experience breakdown as well, because the key to success is being able to hunt a place multiple times. And once the more you can hunt a place, the more successful you can be. So it's basically going to have, like an experience breakdown, like how many people did you see? How many game animals that you're hunting did you see? How many bucks? How many does? How far were you from the road? What time of year did you go? This, that, and what, all these questions, so that when the next year comes up, and you start looking into going another place, if you had a kick-ass time last time, you just look back and say, oh, I went this time. This is where I went. This is how many deer I saw. Let's go to the same place. Or you can look there and you can go, I went this time of year, and the rut activity sucked. So I was either too early or too late. So let's try going 4 days earlier. So it's going to allow people to really hone in and have a lot better overall experience for sure.
Yeah, man. So, let's say, so once you get your animal processed and everything, so have you had an experience with like caping an elk or anything like that to have it mounted?
Yeah, so deer for sure. Elk, no, but besides the cape being bigger, the actual experience of caping the animal isn't all that much different for antlered animals. I can't speak to that for like, mountain sheep or mountain goat or anything like that. But, elk and deer are pretty similar in my experience. And I would advise people to simply learn how to do it. It's not that hard. It might take you a little bit more time, but with an elk especially, you can then cape it out and you can skull cap the head, and that will save you like 20 to 30 pounds just by skull capping it. Like it's kind of insane, but an elk skull is pretty heavy.
Yeah, dude, I can only imagine. So do you have any hunts that you're excited for the 2018 season?
Yeah, for sure, man. Like I have kind of a full docket. I've been getting more and more into filming hunts, so I have quite a few people lined out for me to go film their hunts. And then I drew a Colorado deer tag. I'll have a Colorado elk tag, an Idaho deer tag, a Montana deer tag, Wyoming elk tag, Wyoming late season whitetail, Wyoming regular deer tag, and hopefully South Dakota deer as well. So have a lot of stuff lined out for sure, and I'm excited about every single one of them, to be honest with you. But one thing is for sure, my Wyoming elk tag is a tag that I had 2 years ago, and that video is actually up on our YouTube channel. It was a 2016 elk hunt. Since then, we've released an entire online hunting series. But 2 years ago, I filmed it, put it up there, and I missed a great big bull. And so I'm pretty excited to get back in there and see if I can't get some redemption for sure.
Awesome, man. Maybe, next spring sometime we'll try to get you back on the podcast to see kind of how your season went.
Hey, yeah, man. I'm always more than happy to help out. I mean, that's literally the reason that I started my podcast was, we cover everything archery, hunting, tournaments, all of it, right? Because I think that archery is one of those things, if you don't have guidance and things like that, you start getting frustrated, and more often than not, people quit. So the only reason I started it purely so that people would have a place to turn, so that they would learn from us before they quit and keep pushing forward. So yeah, man, I'm more than happy. I love being able to help as many people as I can. So I'm more than happy to jump back on and help out any way that I can. I really appreciate, you asking me to be on the podcast, and I feel pretty honored to be one of your guests, man. Thanks a bunch.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you for taking some time out of your evening to kind of record this podcast and give us some tips and kind of an idea of what people that are looking forward to doing a Western type hunt can kind of, have a plan now, kind of have a basis to start everything on. So do you want to go ahead and plug your podcast and your Facebook and stuff like that?
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that a ton. So we actually, I had almost 300 episodes, and we decided that we were going to rebrand the podcast with better audio and things like that. So we actually deleted all of them and restarted, and we are on Friday. Episode 9 is going to go out, and that is Archery Maniacs Podcast. You can find us Podbean, Stitcher, iTunes, wherever. And then if you go to www.archerymaniacs.com, you can check out our free online magazine. Obviously YouTube, we have our online series, gear reviews, and everything like that. There's something like 65 gear reviews up there, which for your listeners would be obviously super helpful, because it's mostly over Western style gear that I use. And I don't like people spending money on crap. So I want people to be the most informed that they can. And yeah, obviously Archery Maniacs on Instagram, Facebook, and kind of wherever else you want to look. So come on over, check us out.